He was a man who owned everything, except peace, a powerful CEO, respected by all, yet haunted by one strange curse. No matter what he tried, he couldn't eat anyone's food. Every dish made him sick. Every bite felt wrong. Doctors called it stress. Chefs called it impossible. But one day, a little girl offered him a simple meal, and something changed. For the first time in years, he ate and smiled. Why could he only eat her food? What secret connected them? Something even Tim had hidden. And what truth would shake his world when he finally took her home? In this video, you'll discover the heart-touching story of a man broken by loneliness, a child guided by fate, and how one meal revealed a truth that no one ever expected. Stay till the end. The twist will leave you speechless. Before we talk about the little girl who changed everything, we need to understand the silence that surrounded the CEO's mansion. It wasn't the kind of silence you find in peace. It was the silence of fear, of distance, of a man who had pushed everyone away. Every corner of his home was spotless, shining, expensive, yet empty. Up the kitchen, once busy with world-class chefs, had turned into a museum, full of untouched plates and uneaten food. Then one rainy evening, everything shifted. A small figure appeared at the mansion gates, soaked, trembling, holding a small lunchbox close to her chest. She couldn't have been older than 8. Her clothes were worn out, her shoes torn, and yet there was something pure in her eyes, a calmness, like she didn't belong to the chaos of the world. The guards tried to send her away, thinking she was just another poor child wandering for help. But she didn't leave. She stood there quietly, clutching her lunchbox, saying softly, "Please, I made this for him." Her voice was fragile, but steady. It caught the attention of the headmaid, who had served the CEO for years. She looked at the child with pity and confusion. "For him? You mean for the boss?" The girl nodded. Inside the mansion, the CEO was sitting by his usual corner, untouched food in front of him. Every day was the same. He'd stare at the meal, lift his spoon, and then quietly push the plate away. Nothing tasted right. No amount of spice, sweetness, or luxury could fill the emptiness that had become his life. The maid hesitated before entering. "Sir, there's a little girl outside. She brought food for you." He didn't even look up. "Send her away." But the maid insisted softly. She said she made it herself. "She refuses to leave." There was something about that sentence that made him stop. A child making food for him. It sounded ridiculous, yet a strange curiosity tugged at him. "Let her in," he said quietly. The girl stepped into the grand hall like someone stepping into a dream. Marble floors, chandeliers, golden frames. Everything seemed too big for her small world. But she didn't look scared. She simply looked around and whispered, "Your house smells lonely." The CEO raised an eyebrow, surprised by her words. He had met thousands of adults. None had dared to speak so honestly. She walked toward the dining table and opened her small metal lunchbox. The smell that filled the air wasn't rich or heavy. It was simple, warm rice, lentils, and a small piece of fried fish. It smelled like home, not luxury. Something inside him stirred, a memory perhaps, long buried under years of emptiness. She placed the box in front of him with both hands and said, "It's still warm. I cooked it this morning." He almost smiled, but stopped himself. "You cooked this?" "Yes," she said confidently. "My mom taught me. She said food tastes best when you think of someone while making it." For a moment, he didn't speak. He stared at the food so ordinary, yet somehow inviting. He picked up the spoon, half expecting the same old rejection. But when the first bite touched his tongue, his eyes widened. It wasn't just edible. It was good, not because of the ingredients, but because it tasted alive. The girl watched him silently, her hands folded in front of her. Took another bite, then another. For the first time in years, he finished a meal. The room fell quiet again, but this time, It wasn't empty. It was full. Full of the quiet shock of something miraculous. He looked at her and asked, almost whispering, "What did you put in this?" She shrugged, smiling shyly. "Just salt, some love, and a little prayer that you'd like it." That simple answer hit him harder than he expected. No chef, no doctor, no expert had been able to cure his strange condition. But Eris stood, a child, with a rusty lunchbox, doing what no one else could. He leaned back in his chair, trying to hide his emotions, but his eyes betrayed him. The girl noticed, but said nothing. Instead, she softly asked, "Do you feel better now?" He nodded slowly. "Yes, I do." From that moment, the air in the mansion began to change. The staff whispered about the miracle. Some called it luck, others superstition, but the CEO knew it was something deeper, something he couldn't name yet. Days passed, and she began visiting more often. Sometimes she brought him rice, sometimes soup, sometimes just bread with butter. Each time, he ate without hesitation. The same man who once refused the best cuisines now waited quietly for a child's homemade meal. He found himself asking questions about her life, her dreams, her mother. She answered with the simplicity only a child could have. Her father had died when she was very young. Her mother worked as a maid in another town. She cooked meals for the children at the neighborhood school. Life was hard, but she smiled through it. One evening, while she prepared his meal in the mansion's kitchen, he watched her closely. Her small hands moved with care, her face serious but peaceful. She hummed a soft tune as she cooked, the same melody his mother used to sing when he was a child. He froze. That tune, it was too familiar, too personal. He didn't say anything. He didn't want to scare her, but something inside him whispered, "This is not a coincidence." The servants began to notice his transformation. Smiled more. He walked around instead of locking himself in his office. The heaviness around him started to fade, and all because of a little girl who walked in with a lunchbox. One afternoon, as they ate together, he asked her gently, "Why do you always bring food for me?" She smiled. "Because you looked hungry. Not in your stomach. Here." She pointed to his chest. Her innocence disarmed him completely. He looked down, unable to speak. Every word she spoke, every act of kindness, every meal, it was breaking down the walls he had built for years. He didn't realize it then, but his life was beginning to change forever. And as the days turned into weeks, one thing became certain. This little girl was not just a stranger who cook. She was a mirror to something he had lost long ago. A connection that time had stolen, and fate was slowly returning. Before we talk about the change that begins to stir within him, let's remember who he used to be. A man of silence and distance. The kind of person whose footsteps echoed in empty hallways, whose meals were eaten without a word, whose eyes never softened even at laughter around him. He wasn't cruel, no. Just hollow. A man who had learned to survive in a world where feelings were weaknesses and emotions liabilities. His office was cold, his home quieter than a grave, and his life perfectly organized, meticulously lonely. But then she entered, quietly, unannounced, with the kind of presence that didn't demand attention yet somehow filled every corner she stood in. She wasn't like the people he was used to, no calculated charm, no desperate attempts to impress. Just a girl who cooked like she meant it, who smiled without trying, who spoke softly yet carried something honest in every word. Before we talk about how she changed him, let's talk about curiosity that's small, uninvited emotion that sneaks in when you least expect it. The first time he tasted her food, something shifted. It wasn't just the flavor. It was the care behind it. The warmth and the spices. The gentleness. In how she placed the plate, it wasn't luxury. It was sincerity. And for a man who had lived on precision and perfection, that sincerity was strangely disarming. He found himself wondering, who is this girl? Not in a way of ownership or authority, but in quiet fascination. He began noticing things. The way she hummed while stirring soup, how she brushed off compliments with a shy laugh, how her eyes soft when she saw someone tired or upset. He started waiting for her. Not consciously, but with that silent hope that maybe she'd appear around the next corner. Before we talk about their bond, we should talk about the first time he lingered longer than usual, standing by the kitchen door, watching her cook. The air was thick with the aroma of something homely, something comforting, something that didn't belong in the polished, expensive world he'd built. He wanted to say something, maybe even thank her, but the words stuck. Instead, he just watched, and for the first time in years, he felt still. Gradually, he began to trust her, not because he tried to earn it, but because she never demanded it. Her presence was effortless, her gestures uncalculated. When she spoke, it wasn't to flatter. When she smiled, it wasn't to please. It was pure, and that purity chipped away at the walls he had built around himself. There were days he'd come home from meetings, exhausted and irritable. Yet, one warm bowl of her soup could undo hours of corporate chaos. He didn't tell her that, of course, but she must have sensed it, because she'd always quietly refill his plate before he could ask. Sometimes, she'd leave a small note on the table. Eat while it's warm. Simple words, but they meant more than any boardroom speech he'd ever given. Before we talk about love, because yes, something like love begins to bloom. Let's talk about comfort, the kind that doesn't need grand gestures or confessions. The kind that lives in small, talks about the weather, in sharing leftovers late at night, in listening to her laugh at something trivial. She brought warmth not through words, but through presence, through the quiet rhythm of daily kindness. She'd ask about his day, not because she was curious about his success, but because she cared if he was tired. She'd remind him to take breaks, to eat properly, to rest. And somewhere between those small acts of care, something inside him started to melt. He began noticing things he'd forgotten mattered: the taste of fresh bread, the comfort of home-cooked rice, the sound of rain against the window. He started talking more, not much, but enough to surprise even himself. Sometimes about his work, sometimes about memories from a past he rarely touched. She'd listen, not with the intent to respond, but to understand. And that, perhaps, was what he needed most. Not someone to fix him, but someone to see him. Before we talk about transformation, imagine a dinner where silence isn't heavy anymore, where he looks up mid-bite and finds her smiling, and he smiles back without realizing it. That moment, brief as it is, becomes a quiet miracle. Because for a man who had forgotten how to smile without reason, that single moment means everything. She begins to fill his world without ever trying to belong to it. Her laughter lingers in the hallways. Her scent mixes with the steam of her cooking. His mornings start to feel less mechanical. Coffee tastes better. The house feels less empty. And though he never says it aloud, his heart begins to crave her presence the way one craves light after a long night. He begins to help her sometimes awkwardly, like a child learning something new. Once, he tries chopping vegetables and almost ruins them all. She laughs, and instead of feeling embarrassed, he finds himself laughing too. It's strange, that feeling, being human again. Before we talk about realization, picture this. He's sitting at the table, waiting. The clock ticks past dinner time, and she's running late. For the first time, he feels the ache of absence. The room feels colder, the air heavier. When she finally arrives, apologizing breathlessly, he doesn't scold her. He just says, "I thought you weren't coming." And in that simple line lies everything. Care, fear, and a quiet confession. He can't. Yet. Nay. She becomes the warmth he never knew he needed. The one who listens, who understands, who teaches him the beauty of slowing down. Through her, he learns that love isn't fireworks. It's steady, like a candle's flame that never flickers, no matter how dark the room gets. And so, before we talk about what the future holds for them, it's enough to say this, that through her small talks, her gentle gestures, her meals shared in silence and laughter, she brings life back into his world. She makes him feel seen, fed, and human again. And sometimes, that's all a person really needs. Not a grand love story, but a small, quiet reminder that warmth still exists in a cold world. Before we talk about the storm that begins to brew, let's remember how calm things had seemed just moments before. The warmth, the quiet laughter, the soft connection over meals. It all felt almost too gentle, too fragile, as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for reality to catch up. Because in stories like these, peace never lasts without a test. And this one comes not from fate, but from people eyes that see too much, mouths that whisper too quickly, hearts that envy what they don't understand. Before we talk about the chaos outside, let's talk about how subtle it begins. It starts with glances. Small, judgmental, questioning looks from those around him. A CEO, known for his strictness and composure, now seen smiling quietly at a girl from the kitchen. To the world, it doesn't make sense. To them, it's a scandal waiting to happen. And rumors, once born, grow fast. The staff begins to talk, not loudly, but enough for words to travel through corridors. She's getting too close. Did you see the way he looked at her? There must be something going on. They don't mean to be cruel, but gossip has a way of staining even the purest intentions. The girl senses it, the way conversations stop when she enters. The sudden silence that fills the room. She lowers her eyes, keeps her distance, but the weight of their judgment follows her everywhere. Before we talk about how deeply it hurts her, imagine being someone who only ever wanted to care, and suddenly finding that kindness turned into suspicion. Every smile becomes questioned, every gesture misunderstood. The meals she once cooked with love now feel like trials. Aberivite, Tex feels watched. Every compliment, a whisper waiting to be twisted. Family enters the scene next. His family, with their poised manners and polite disapproval. To them, this girl doesn't belong. She doesn't fit the image they've built for him. The powerful CEO who should marry someone appropriate, someone who belongs to their circle. At dinner, they mention her name casually, as if by accident. We heard about that girl who works for you. Isn't she getting a little too familiar? He doesn't respond. Not immediately, because deep down, he doesn't know how to explain it either. It's not about status or beauty or logic. It's something simpler, deeper, a connection he can't define. Yet the more they talk, the more he begins to question himself. Before we talk about doubt, we need to understand the fear behind it. He isn't afraid of them, not really. He's afraid of what their words awaken inside him. What if they're right? What if this isn't what it seems? What if he's mistaking gratitude for affection, or warmth for something else entirely? At work, his rivals seize the moment. They notice his distraction, the way his focus slips whenever she's near. One of them, a sharp-tongued executive, makes a remark during a meeting, something coated in politeness, but heavy with malice. Perhaps the CEO's attention is elsewhere these days, maybe in the kitchen, not the boardroom. The laughter that follows is short and cruel. He doesn't respond, but his silence says enough. That night, he doesn't go to dinner. He stays late at the office, lost in numbers and files that can't distract him from the sound of her laughter echoing in his memory. He tells himself it's just food, just comfort, just a small escape. But deep down, he knows it's something more, something dangerous in a world that punishes emotion. Before we talk about the girl's fear, picture her waiting that night. The table's set, the food warm, his chair empty. She glances at the clock, then at the door, her hands nervously clutching the apron. He doesn't come. The food grows cold, the silence heavier. When
he finally returns, it's past midnight. He doesn't say much, just nods politely and goes straight to his room. She feels the distance immediately, the way his voice loses its softness, the way his eyes no longer meet hers. Something's changed, and it's not anger. It's uncertainty, the kind that eats at you quietly, leaving you unsure where you stand. Before we talk about heartbreak, let's talk about misunderstanding. She begins to think maybe she crossed a line. Maybe Her kindness was mistaken. Maybe she gave too much, too freely. The next morning, she's quieter, more distant. She avoids eye contact, speaks only when necessary. Her laughter disappears. And he knows, but pride, that silent destroyer of fragile bonds, keeps him from asking why. Instead, he convinces himself this is better, that maybe the distance will make things easier, cleaner. But it doesn't. It only makes everything heavier. The staff senses the tension. They watch the shift. The way she no longer waits for him at dinner. The way he walks past her without a word. Some feel satisfaction, others guilt. Yet the whispers continue. Before we talk about confrontation, there's a moment, a quiet one, when he finds her alone in the kitchen late at night. She's packing leftovers, her hands trembling slightly. He stands at the doorway, unsure what to say. The silence between them is thick, uncomfortable. Finally, she speaks first. Her voice small but steady. "I think I should leave." The words hit him harder than he expects. He turns, confused. "Why?" She hesitates, then says softly, "Because people are talking. Because I don't want you to be hurt because of me. You've already done enough. I don't want to be the reason others question you." Before we talk about his reaction, let's pause on her courage, because it takes strength to walk away from something that means everything to you. She isn't crying, but her eyes glisten, not with self-pity, but with quiet resignation. He wants to say something, anything, but he doesn't. The words won't form. He's too torn between reason and emotion, between his world and hers. And so he just stands there, letting her walk away, her footsteps echoing through the hall like a slow goodbye. In the following days, the house feels different. The meals taste dull, the air colder. The laughter that once filled the space is gone. Everyone notices it, even those who mocked before. But pride, once again, keeps him silent. Before we talk about realization, we need to see how deeply he struggles. At work, he's efficient but distracted. His decisions are sharp, yet his heart feels hollow. He begins to avoid the dining room altogether because every meal reminds him of her. The warmth she brought is gone, replaced by the echo of what could have been. He starts questioning everything. His feelings, his motives, his identity. Was it really just about food, or was it about what the food represented? Care, home, belonging. Was he drawn to her cooking, or to the kindness that came with it? He can't tell anymore. And that confusion becomes his quiet torment. Meanwhile, the girl works elsewhere now. Quieter, reserved. But even in her new surroundings, her thoughts drift back to him. She wonders if he's eating properly, if he's sleeping enough, if he ever thinks about her. But she doesn't reach out. She knows her place, or thinks she does. Before we talk about change, imagine him sitting in his office one late evening, the city lights flickering outside. On his desk lies a meal someone else brought, neatly prepared, perfectly presented. Yet when he tastes it, it feels empty. No warmth, no soul. That's when it hits him. It was never about the food. It was about her. And as the realization dawns, the weight of all those voices, the staff, the family, the rivals, begins to fade into the background. Because beneath all the noise, all the doubt, something true remains. The memory of how she made him feel human again. But for now, before we talk about what he'll do next, it's enough to stay here, in the quiet ache of realization. In the space between what's lost and what might still be found. The world outside may judge, criticize, or misunderstand. But inside him, something stronger stirs the beginning of truth, born from the ashes of conflict. Before we talk about the decision that changes everything, let's return to the silence that follows conflict, that heavy kind of quiet that doesn't just fill rooms, but hearts. Days have passed since she left, and though the world around him continues to move, he feels like he's standing still. Meetings blur together, reports pile up, and voices fade into the background. The only sound that truly reaches him anymore is memory, the faint echo of her laughter in the kitchen, the clatter of dishes, the soft hum she used to make while stirring a pot. Before we talk about his choice, let's talk about absence. It's strange how something so invisible can weigh so much. Every evening, when he returns to the mansion, he walks through spaces that once felt alive and now seem drained of color. The dining table sits untouched. The air feels cold. He tries eating, but the food perfectly cooked by professional chefs feels lifeless. The flavors are right, but the warmth is gone. It's like tasting perfection without a soul. He tells himself it's ridiculous that he's a grown man, a CEO, surrounded by everything anyone could ever want. Yet somehow, he feels incomplete, not because of what's missing on the table, but because of what's missing in his heart. Before we talk about the turning point, imagine one night, late, quiet, the city lights distant and blurred through the rain. He sits alone at his desk, a half-finished meal beside him, cold and untouched. A thought slips in small, at first, almost foolish. What if I brought her back? But then pride fights back. You can't. People will talk. They already have. And yet, another voice, softer, truer, answers inside him. Let them talk. You've already lost more by listening to them than you ever gained from their approval. Before we talk about action, we have to understand the kind of man he was: methodical, rational, cautious. He didn't make impulsive moves. Every decision was planned, calculated, strategic. But this wasn't business. It was human. It came not from logic, but from the ache in his chest that reason could no longer silence. That night, he stands and walks toward the kitchen, the same place where she once stood, apron tied, humming softly. He runs his hand across the counter where she used to chop vegetables. Everything is spotless, untouched. But to him, it feels wrong, too clean, too quiet. He remembers the way she once looked up from this very spot, smiling, saying, "You work too much. You should rest before your food gets cold." He almost laughs at the memory, except that it hurts too much. Before we talk about resolve, picture him taking out his phone, scrolling through his contacts, hesitating. Her number is still saved, though Hasanti called it once since she left. His thumb hovers over the screen. For a man who commands thousands with a single call, this simple act feels impossibly hard. Finally, he presses it. The line rings once, twice. Then a quiet, startled voice answers, "Hello?" He doesn't know what to say at first. Words, for once, fail him. Finally, he exhales and says, softly, "It's me." There's a pause, not cold, not distant, just heavy. She breathes in. "I wasn't expecting your call." "I know," he replies. "I just wanted to ask if you're doing well." Another silence. Then she says, "I'm fine. Thank you." But her voice trembles just slightly, enough for him to hear the truth beneath the politeness. Before we talk about what he asks next, imagine that pause. That thin line between restraint and honesty, between longing and pride. Then, finally, he says it, "I want you to come back." The words hang in the air, heavy with meaning. She doesn't answer immediately. He can almost see her expression through the phone. Surprise, confusion, hesitation. "Sir," she says softly, "that wouldn't be right. People already think." "I don't care what people think," he interrupts. It's the first time he's ever said that aloud, maybe even to himself. "I've spent my whole life caring what they think, and look where it's gotten me: a house that feels like a museum and food that tastes like nothing." Before we talk about her reaction, let's pause on his honesty, because for him, that's the true moment of change. He's no longer speaking as a CEO, no longer hiding behind power or structure. He's just a man, tired, lonely, human. She doesn't answer right away. Her silence says more than words. Then, carefully, she says, "You don't need me there. You have everything. You just need time." "I don't need time," he says quietly. "I need warmth. I need something real. And you He hesitates, searching for the right words. You brought that into my life without even trying. Before we talk about the invitation, let's talk about the fear behind it. He knows how it might look. A powerful man asking a woman to live under his roof. The world will twist it, judge it, mock it. But this isn't about possession. It's about protection. About keeping something genuine safe in a world that feeds on rumor. So, with steady calm, he says, "Come live here." Not as an employee. Not as a servant, as someone I trust. She's silent again. He can almost hear her heartbeat through the phone. "I can't," she whispers. "People will say things." "They already did," he replies. "And I lost you because of it. I won't make that mistake again." Before we talk about the decision she makes, picture her on the other end of the line, sitting on a small bed in a modest apartment. Her apron, still hanging by the window. She stares at the phone, her hands trembling slightly. This man, the one she once feared disappointing, is now speaking with the rawness of someone stripped of pride. She doesn't say yes immediately, but something in his tone tells her this isn't a command. It's a plea, not from a man of power, but from a heart that's finally learned what it means to need. "Just think about it," he says finally. "Softana. I'll send a car in the morning. You don't have to decide tonight." Before we talk about her arrival, imagine the next day. Dawn breaks slowly over the city. He's up early, earlier than usual, pacing the hallway, checking his watch, pretending to read the newspaper. He hasn't turned a single page of. The car has already been sent. The house staff instructed not to gossip, not to question. When she finally arrives, she stands at the entrance, hesitant, eyes lowered. He steps forward, not as her employer, but as someone relieved to see her again. "Thank you for coming," he says simply. "I haven't decided to stay yet," she replies. Voice quiet but firm. "I know," he says, with a faint smile. "But you're here. That's enough for now." Before we talk about comfort, let's linger on this moment. The stillness, the air between them charged with all the things they haven't said. He shows her to a guest room. Warm, simple, overlooking the garden. "You can stay here," he says. "You'll have your privacy. I just want you to feel safe." She nods, still uncertain. Yet as she looks around, she notices something: the table in the dining hall set for two, the vase of fresh flowers by the window, the faint aroma of tea. It feels like he has been waiting not just for her, but for life to return. Before we talk about what comes next, there's a quiet dinner that evening. No words, at first. Just the clinking of cutlery, the warmth of home-cooked food, filling the silence. He takes a bite, and this time, it tastes real. He doesn't hide his relief. She watches him, unsure whether to smile. And finally, he says softly, "I didn't realize how much I needed this." She looks down, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's just food." He shakes his head gently. "No, it's not." And that's the moment, quiet, unannounced, when the decision truly takes root. Not because he demanded it, but because she feels, for the first time, that maybe she belongs here, not as part of his status, not as a name on his payroll, but as a piece of his peace. Before we talk about how the world will react to this, it's enough to stay in this fragile calm, the night where two people share a meal not out of duty or charity, but out of unspoken care. The mansion that once echoed with loneliness now hums with life again. And though they both know the whispers will return, neither of them speaks of it, because sometimes the bravest decision isn't shouted or defended. It's made quietly over dinner, between two hearts that finally understand that protection can be an act of love, and love, an act of courage. Before we talk about the discovery that changes everything, let's linger in the illusion of calm, that quiet stretch of days when life almost feels normal again. The house has warmth once more. The clinking of spoons, the faint scent of spices. Her laughter, they fill the mansion like sunlight after years of rain. He has stopped worrying about what others say. He works during the day, eats with her in the evening, and for the first time in years, he sleeps soundly. But peace has a way of testing itself, and sometimes the truth waits, silent, patient, hidden beneath the very comfort you think you've found. Before we talk about the moment it all begins, imagine one ordinary evening. He's in his study, sorting through old papers, trying to clear space for her to store some of her things. It's quiet. The sound of rain taps softly against the window. On the desk are stacks of business documents, old contracts, and personal letters, fragments of a past he rarely visits. As he sorts, his fingers brush against something different, an old, worn envelope tucked beneath a ledger. The handwriting on it stops him cold. It's from her, not the woman in the kitchen now, but her mother, the one who vanished years ago, the one who left without explanation. Before we talk about what the letter says, let's remember that chapter, the one he locked away long ago. There was a time, long before success, when he had been deeply in love, a woman whose laughter had been wild and unafraid, whose heart matched his ambition. They had dreams of a future, a home, a family. But then, one day, she was gone. No warning, no goodbye, only a note that said, "Please don't look for me." He had looked anyway. For months, he searched through cities, hospitals, records. Nothing. Eventually, pain hardened into silence. He threw himself into work, buried the past under titles and wealth. But now, here in his hands, was a letter that shouldn't exist. He opens it carefully. The paper is old, fragile, but the words are sharp as ever. If you ever find this, it means the truth has reached you. Forgive me for leaving. I had no choice. There were people who would hurt us both. I had to keep us safe. Our daughter, she carries your birthmark, the one on your wrist. Please don't hate me. I did what I thought was right. Before we talk about shock, picture him sitting there, completely still. The rain outside grows heavier, but he doesn't move. His mind races, trying to process each word. Our daughter. The phrase echoes again and again until it feels unreal. He reads the letter twice, 3 times. Every detail feels like a wound reopening. And then, a memory the first time he met her. The girl in his home now. He remembers how strangely familiar her face had felt. The quiet calm in her eyes, the way she had smiled, even the dimple near her cheek. He had brushed it off as coincidence then. But now it feels impossible to ignore. Before we talk about realization, we have to talk about denial. He stands abruptly, pacing the room, clutching the letter like a lifeline. No, it can't be. His rational mind fights it. It's too absurd, too coincidental. But then, another memory. The day she first burned her hand on the stove, and he had seen it. A small, crescent-shaped birthmark on her wrist. The same one his mother used to call the family's crescent. He hadn't thought much of it then, but now, the letter in his hand trembles as the truth begins to take form. Before we talk about confrontation, let's move to the next morning. He doesn't sleep that night. When dawn breaks, he's still in his chair, staring at the letter. The rain has stopped, but the storm inside him hasn't. She finds him there when she brings his breakfast. Cheerful at first, until she sees his face. "Are you all right?" she asks softly, setting the tray down. He looks up slowly. There is a long pause before he speaks. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Your mother," he says carefully. "Do you remember her name?" Her expression changes instantly: confusion, then caution. "Why? Please," he says quietly. "Just tell me." She hesitates, then answers. Her name was Anaya. The world seems to still around him. He closes his eyes, the name echoing through every memory. Anaya. The same woman who left him. The same name signed at the bottom of the letter, now trembling in his hand. Before we talk about how the truth unfolds, imagine her confusion as he reaches into the desk, handing her the letter. "I found this," he says softly, "last night." She takes it slowly, her fingers brushing against his. When she sees her mother's handwriting, her breath catches. "Where did you? It was hidden in my files," he interrupts. "I don't know how long it's been there." She reads the first few lines, and her eyes widen. Her lips part, but no words come. When she reaches the words "our daughter," her hand begins to shake. "I don't understand," she whispers. "What is this?" He swallows hard, his voice low. "I think it means what we're both afraid to believe." Before we talk about acceptance, let's pause in this moment of disbelief. Two people, a man and a girl, standing in the same room, bound by a truth neither was ready for. The silence is thick, trembling between them. She looks at him as though seeing him for the first time, searching for signs in his face, his eyes, his voice. Then, suddenly, memories start flooding her too. The strange familiarity she'd always felt around him. The warmth that didn't make sense. The way his eyes softened whenever she laughed. "You can't be serious," she whispers. "I didn't believe it either," he says, voice cracking slightly. But it's her handwriting, and the birthmark. He reaches out, gently taking her wrist. The faint crescent glows softly under the morning light. He turns his hand, showing his own the same mark, the same curve. Before we talk about what that realization does to them, let's step back into his memory. A flashback that hits him all at once. He sees it. Years ago, the last night he saw Anaya. She had been frightened, trembling. She'd said someone was after her, that his enemies, the ones who wanted to destroy his rising empire, had found out about her pregnancy. He had promised to protect her, but she had disappeared before he could act. The police found nothing. Her belongings vanished, her address gone. He assumed the worst, that she had left him by choice. But now, seeing this letter, he knows the truth. She ran to keep their child safe. Before we talk about the weight of that realization, think of what it means to a man like him, who's built his entire life on control, only to discover that fate had been quietly writing its own story behind his back. He sits down slowly, the exhaustion catching up with him. "All these years," he murmurs. "I thought she was gone forever. I thought I lost everything. But she," he looks up at her, tears threatening to fall. "She kept you safe." She's silent, tears brimming in her eyes. "I never knew," she says softly. "She never told me anything. Just that my father wasn't alive." He lets out a trembling breath. "Maybe that was her way of protecting you. If people thought I was gone, no one would come looking." Before we talk about what comes next, picture them sitting across from each other, two lives, once separated by fear, now linked again by fate. Neither knows what to say. The truth is too big, too heavy. Yet beneath the shock, there's something else. A strange, overwhelming sense of belonging. He looks at her again, this time not with curiosity, not with affection, but with something deeper recognition. "All this time," he whispers, "you were right in front of me." She wipes her tears, managing a small, fragile smile. "And all this time, I was looking for where I came from." Before we talk about closure, imagine how the house feels that night. The same walls that once witnessed loneliness, now holding a secret that feels both painful and miraculous. He walks through the halls differently now, touching the framed photos on the wall, his parents, his younger self, and realizing how life has looped back in ways he never expected. In her room, she sits by the window, holding the letter close. The moonlight touches the words her mother wrote, and she whispers softly, "You kept your promise. Mama, you kept me safe." Meanwhile, he sits alone in his study, staring at the small family photograph he once kept hidden. In it, he's younger, standing beside Anaya, her smile bright, her hand resting gently over her stomach. For years, he'd thought that picture was only a reminder of loss. Now, it's proof of what he's found again. Before we talk about what they will do with this truth, it's enough to stay here, in the quiet aftermath of discovery, where pain and wonder blend together. The questions will come later: how she got here, who helped her, why destiny brought her back this way. But for now, it's just a father and daughter, strangers once, bound by fate. reunited by a letter and a birthmark, sitting beneath the same roof that was always meant to be theirs. And though neither speaks it aloud, they both feel it the beginning of something neither expected to find. A family restored, not by chance, but by the quiet persistence of truth waiting to be found. Before we talk about the tears that finally fall, we have to talk about the silence that comes first, that long, aching stillness when truth hangs between two people like a fragile thread. The CEO stands there, unable to speak, unable to move, staring at the girl who has unknowingly carried the missing piece of his soul all this time. His chest tightens, every breath heavy with years of guilt and disbelief. The walls that once protected him from emotion now seemed like a cage closing in. He sees her face, the eyes, the small gestures, the quiet bravery, and realizes with a shattering clarity that all along he had been standing before a part of himself he lost long ago. He remembers the choices that led to this moment, the arguments, the separation, the letter he never read, the mistake that cost him his peace. Every memory comes rushing back, like a storm breaking through a locked door. The guilt claws at him, guilt for not searching harder, for not believing, for letting time steal away something so precious. But beneath that guilt, there's relief too, the kind that breaks you open. Because even after all the years, fate still gave him a chance to make things right. Before we talk about forgiveness, we need to talk about confusion. The girl stands frozen, staring at the man she admired, trusted, maybe even loved in some innocent, complicated way. Now she finds out he is her father. The person she had imagined in childhood stories, the one she thought never cared, never looked back. Her mind spins with questions she can't voice. Why didn't you find me? Why now? What am I supposed to feel? Her heart aches between anger and longing, between the need to run and the need to stay. Every shared moment, every meal, every laugh, every comforting glance now feels different, heavier, reshaped by truth. The CEO wants to speak, but words tremble in his throat. He takes a hesitant step forward, unsure if he's allowed to close the distance anymore. His voice cracks as he finally whispers her name, not the one he used to call her in the office or kitchen, but the one he gave her when she was born. That sound breaks something inside her. She realizes that no matter how much she tries to resist, that single word carries warmth she's been craving her whole life. Before we talk about healing, we have to talk about the breakdown. The girl weeps, not the polite tears of sadness, but the raw, uncontrollable kind that come from years of unanswered longing. The CEO falls to his knees beside her, the weight of his mistakes pulling him down. He doesn't try to justify or explain, he just lets himself cry with her, for the years lost, for the childhood stolen by pride and distance. In that moment, power, status, and titles mean nothing. He is not a CEO anymore, just a father begging silently for forgiveness from the child he never got to hold. The house, once echoing with emptiness, now feels alive with emotion. The portraits on the walls, cold reminders of legacy, seem to fade into the background, as the two hold on to each other like survivors of the same storm. Time stands still. She feels the warmth of his embrace, hesitant at first, then genuine, the kind that promises protection without control, love without expectation. Before we talk about acceptance, we have to talk about the fragile process of trust rebuilding itself. It doesn't happen all at once. There are nights when she avoids his eyes, days when he hesitates to approach her, but small gestures begin to bridge the gap. Shared breakfasts, quiet walks in the garden, late-night talks over tea. They start to rebuild not as strangers bound by blood, but as two hearts learning to recognize each other again. The CEO often finds himself watching her from a distance, marveling at the way she hums while cooking, or how she leaves little notes reminding him to eat. Every small act feels like a gift, and for the first time in years, his mansion doesn't feel like a prison of marble and silence. It feels like home. Before we talk about forgiveness, we have to talk about understanding. The girl begins to see the man behind the mistakes, the father who suffered, who blamed himself quietly while pretending strength. She sees how his eyes soften when she enters the room, how he tries awkwardly, sometimes clumsily, to make up for lost time. Slowly, her anger melts into something else. Compassion. She realizes forgiveness doesn't erase pain, but it does open space for love to grow again. In the soft glow of evening, they sit together, two people bound by blood and redemption. The CEO listens as she tells him about the years she spent alone, the struggles, the small joys. He listens, not as a man of power, but as a father who wants to memorize every word, every laugh, every tear. And though neither of them says it outright, they both know that something sacred has been restored. Not perfectly, but honestly. Before we talk about the peace that finally settles over their lives, we have to talk about the quiet mornings that come first. The kind of mornings where sunlight touches the kitchen counter, and laughter replaces the silence that once filled every room. The mansion, once known for its cold perfection, now feels alive. The sound of clinking spoons, the soft rhythm of footsteps, and the faint aroma of breakfast have become the new language of love between a father and daughter who have both learned how to start again. The CEO, the man once feared by his employees, admired by investors, yet hollow inside, now wakes up earlier, not for meetings or market updates, but to wait for her voice calling from the kitchen. He no longer eats mechanically, no longer sees food as an obligation. Every meal she prepares carries a story, a memory, a warmth that reminds him of what he almost lost. He notices how she still hums softly while cooking, how her hands move with confidence and care, and how her smile lights up the entire house. For the first time in years, he realizes that food isn't just nourishment, it's communication, forgiveness, and belonging, all served on a single plate. Before we talk about their new bond, we have to talk about the effort it took to build it. Healing didn't arrive overnight. There were still moments of hesitation, times when she'd retreat into her room, or when he'd worry that saying too much would break the fragile trust between them. But they both kept trying. She began to open up about her past, the orphanage, the struggles, the people who helped her survive. He, in turn, told her stories about her mother, about the dreams they once had, about the guilt that had haunted him since she disappeared. Those long conversations, often shared over late dinners or quiet tea, became their therapy to hearts stitching themselves back together with words. Before we talk about joy, we must remember that it comes in small, almost invisible moments. The CEO now joins her in the kitchen, sometimes clumsily chopping vegetables or tasting sauces with exaggerated seriousness, making her laugh until she forgets everything else. They visit the company together too. She walks the halls, where people whisper in disbelief, not out of scandal now, but curiosity and admiration. Once, he was known for his iron discipline and emotional distance. Now, his staff sees a different man, one who smiles more, who eats in the cafeteria with his employees, who asks about their families. His cold reputation begins to fade, replaced by a quiet warmth that even the most skeptical hearts can feel. Before we talk about connection, we have to talk about symbols. Food, once a battlefield of emotion and resistance, has transformed into their shared ritual. He no longer rejects it. He welcomes it. Every dish he prepares is not just a meal, but a memory of loss, of reunion, of love There's meaning in every bite, in every spoonful he accepts from her hands. Sometimes he closes his eyes while eating, not just to savor the taste, but to thank the universe silently for bringing her back. And she watches him with a soft pride, knowing that each time he finishes his plate, he's saying something deeper than words ever could. I accept. I forgive. I love. Before we talk about reflection, we must look at how both of them have changed. The CEO, once obsessed with control and perfection, now understands the power of imperfection, the beauty of moments that aren't rehearsed, the strength found in vulnerability. He no longer hides behind his work. Instead, he finds purpose in presence, in listening, in sharing, in simply being a father. The girl, once uncertain and guarded, now stands tall with quiet confidence. She's no longer the girl who cooked for the CEO, but his daughter, his family, his heart. She's found her place, not through wealth or status, but through love that survived even when everything else fell apart. Before we talk about legacy, we have to talk about change. The company itself begins to mirror his transformation. He starts initiatives that focus on care, employee wellness programs, family days, charity kitchens feeding underprivileged children. The man who once believed profit was the measure of success now believes that kindness is the true currency of life. He tells his board during one meeting, "Power built my empire, but love rebuilt my home." And though not everyone understands, those who see the light in his eyes know he means every word. Before we talk about peace, we must acknowledge the acceptance that comes before it. They visit her mother's grave together one day, the air heavy with memories and silence. He places a bouquet. She kneels beside him, and for a long while, neither speaks. The only sound is the wind, gentle and forgiving. When he finally whispers, "I found her," his voice breaks. But there is no shame in it, only gratitude. The girl reaches for his hand, and in that simple gesture, years of separation, guilt, and sorrow dissolve into a quiet understanding. At home, their life moves forward in rhythms both ordinary and sacred. Breakfasts filled with chatter, evenings spent in front of old photo albums, occasional arguments that end not in anger but in laughter. He sometimes calls her Little Chef, a nickname that makes her roll her eyes and smile anyway. The mansion that once echoed with emptiness now hums with life. Every corner holds a reminder that love doesn't always arrive on time, but it always arrives when it's meant to. Before we talk about endings, we have to talk about meaning. The CEO has learned that the answers he spent years chasing in boardrooms, contracts, and power were never hidden in numbers or authority. They were waiting quietly in the warmth of home-cooked meals, in the small acts of care, in the simple fact that love can rebuild what ambition destroys. He looks at his daughter one evening as they share dinner, her laughter soft, her presence steady, and realizes that he doesn't need anything more. Sometimes, the answer isn't found in control, but in surrender. Not in achievement, but in connection. Not in the mind, but in the heart. And though life continues with its imperfections, he finally feels whole, not because of what he owns, but because of who sits across the table from him, smiling, reminding him that love, not power, is what truly feeds the soul. And so, as the truth finally comes to light, their world stands still, hearts full, eyes wet, and destinies rewritten. The man who once lived in shadows has found a light he never knew he needed his own child. But will this beautiful truth unite them, or tear their world apart once their family discovers it? The road ahead won't be easy. Love, guilt, and fate will all collide.